Hey guys, Jason here with Gen Zion, and thanks for tuning in to Israel, a Story in Motion. This is our very first multi-part curriculum. This is a 6-part series. So before we go any further, I just wanted to inform you that if you're watching video 4 or video 6 right now, make sure you stop, go back to video 1 because these videos were created in sequential order, providing a broad biblical timeline from Genesis to Revelation regarding God's plans for the nation of Israel, past, present, and future. And it really provides so much exposure to the days you're living in today. So whether you're a supporter or you're skeptical as a believer or you're a critic when it comes to matching up the Bible and the nation of Israel, I'm just glad you're here. Thanks for tuning in. I hope I can give you some solid food for thought on a spiritual level. A couple of other things. As much as I would have loved to stop along the way and provide deep details for every single topic and pivotal turning point throughout this journey, time just doesn't permit, because we've engineered these to be short videos to provide you ample time if you're in study groups or whatever it is, whatever setting you're in, to really reflect on the material, which leads me to my next point. For each of the 6 parts of the series, we've created a PDF study guide, and a direct downloadable link can be found in the description below this video and each of the other episodes as well. This is for those of you who are leaders, small group leaders, youth pastors. We want to equip you with tools so that you can confidently engage the next generation and help them enhance their biblical worldview when it comes to the nation of Israel. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoy. Right now, there are millions of voices telling you that Israel has no right to exist, that the Jewish people are of no consequence, even that today's Jews are not real Jews, and that modern Israel has nothing to do with the Israel of the Bible. But here's the real question. What if the Bible actually gives us a clear, historical, and testable foundation for the existence of Israel today? And what if the story is so accurate, so consistent, and so impossible to counterfeit that it becomes evidence that God is active in the world today, Scripture is completely trustworthy, and history is not random at all? This series is called Israel, a Story in Motion, because the story hasn't come to completion. In fact, my proposal to you is that you're witnessing it unfold in real time, something generations have anticipated for thousands of years. My hope is that the weight of the days you're living in confronts you in such a way that it causes you to live godly, intentionally, and unashamedly as we see the day approaching. But to understand where we are today, we have to go back to the very beginning, to the origin of the promise and the origin of the people. We're going to pick up in Genesis chapter 3. God created humanity to live in a relationship with Him, to reflect His character, and to steward the earth. But when Adam and Eve rebelled against God, sin entered the world and death through sin. The consequences were immediate and devastating. Shame replaced innocence, fear replaced faith, death entered the human story. Every aspect of brokenness we see in the world today, whether it's violence, injustice, corruption, suffering, they all trace back to that tragic moment. But in the middle of judgment, God made a promise. In Genesis 3:15, God speaks to the serpent and declares, "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall crush your head, and you shall bruise his heel." This is the first promise of redemption in the entire Bible. God announces that one day a seed, a descendant of the woman, will come and defeat the serpent. In other words, the devil is not going to win. Sin will not have the final word. From this moment forward, the Bible becomes the story of how God will bring that promised seed into the world. Every genealogy matters, every covenant matters, every generation matters. And the question becomes, through whom or what will the seed come? Thankfully, the Bible makes the answer very clear. The seed who would bring blessing not only to Israel, but to every nation on earth. That means the story of Israel doesn't just have implications for one group of people. It is about God's plan to redeem the world. It's about how He would provide salvation for you and for me. And the next major step in that plan begins with a man named Abram. In Genesis 12, God calls Abram. Abram is not living in the land of Israel. He is living in a pagan society in ancient Babylon, Iraq of today. He is not searching for God, yet God chooses him. And God makes a promise that will shape the rest of biblical history. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and through you all the families of the earth will be blessed. This moment marks the beginning of what we call the Abrahamic covenant. God promises Abram 3 things: a people, a land, and a blessing that's global in scope. This is the foundation of Israel's history. But something else is critical. This covenant is described as being everlasting in nature. It is not temporary. It is not metaphorical or symbolic. It is rooted in the character of God himself. And make sure to note that the land promised to Abram wasn't vague. It was very specific. In Genesis 13, God expands the promise. After Abram and Lot separate, God tells Abram to lift up his eyes and look in every direction. Then God says, "All the land that you see, I will give to you and your descendants forever." This matters because the promise of Israel is not metaphorical or symbolic, like I previously said. It is geographical, a real people tied to a real land across real generations. And notice something else. The land is not earned. It is given sovereignly by God himself, which means the existence of Israel is not simply a political issue, it's theological. Either God meant what he said or he didn't. The crux of the matter today, as so many in-house doctrinal debates take place. The reality is that at the end of the day, God said it, and that settles it. In Genesis 15, something extraordinary happens. God formally ratifies the covenant, but Genesis 15 does more than repeat the promise from Genesis 12. It expands it and introduces a profound prophecy about Abram's descendants. In this chapter, God tells Abram 3 things about the future. First, his descendants will become strangers in a foreign land. Second, they will be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years. Lastly, God himself will judge that nation, bring his people out with great possessions, and return them to the land he's given them. This prophecy becomes the glue of Israel's early history because centuries later, every one of these details unfolds exactly as God said they would. Israel becomes enslaved in Egypt, they suffer oppression, God delivers them through the Exodus, and eventually they return to the land with great possession. But Genesis 15 also contains another critical moment. In the ancient world, covenants were sealed when both parties walked between sacrificed animals or parted animals. But in this chapter, Abram falls into a deep sleep, and God alone passes between the pieces. This means something very profound. The covenant does not depend on Abram's ability to keep it. It depends on God's faithfulness to see it through. This is how we know the Abrahamic covenant is unconditional. He had no part in instituting it. In Genesis 17, God establishes the sign of the covenant, circumcision. Every male descendant of Abraham would carry this sign as a reminder that they belonged to the covenant family. It marked identity, it marked continuity across generations. God also changes Abram's name to Abraham, for he will be the father of many nations. And once again, God describes this covenant as an everlasting promise. The promise continues. The promise was never meant to stop with Abraham. In Genesis 26, God appears to Isaac, Abraham's son, and reconfirms the covenant. God repeats the promises of land, descendants, and blessing. Then in Genesis 35, God reconfirms the covenant again, this time to Jacob, Abraham's grandson. Jacob's name was changed to Israel after wrestling with God. You can see this in Genesis 32. And the covenant promises continue through him and his physical descendants. Now the covenant expands from one man to an entire family. And eventually, that family is going to become a nation through whom God will bring redemption to the world. The only reason God made a flagship nation for himself was in order to send perfect redemption into the world and make himself known to the nations. Sin brought about the need for a chosen nation. The bringing about of Israel was actually for your benefit and for my benefit. If God made an everlasting covenant with Abraham and his descendants, and if those descendants still exist today, and if they have returned to the land God promised them, just as he said they would, then history isn't random at all. God keeps his word, and if God keeps his promises about Israel, then you can trust him with your life, your future, and your eternity. The Abrahamic covenant is everlasting. It is the covenant through which God would bring the promised seed, the Messiah, into the world. Later in Israel's history, God would introduce another covenant through Moses, the Mosaic covenant. That covenant governed how Israel was to live as a nation. It included laws, commandments, blessings for obedience, and consequences for disobedience. But here's the critical distinction. The Mosaic covenant is conditional. The Abrahamic covenant is unconditional. They coexist. Something else that's unique about the Mosaic covenant is how so much of it provides foreshadowing of the coming Messiah. The Mosaic covenant governs Israel's behavior. The Abrahamic covenant secures God's promise. Which means even when Israel failed, even in their unbelief, even when they were scattered, even when the world believed their story was over, God's promise remained. And that's why the story is still in motion. God doesn't commit to something he can't fulfill. And the existence of Israel today is one of the greatest pieces of evidence that he keeps his word.